Peace has a price, and a lot of people pay for it by over-explaining themselves to the wrong audience. Every minute you spend defending your growth to someone who preferred you uncertain is a minute taken from the life you are trying to build. That is the awkward part no one likes to admit. Sometimes the drain is not dramatic. It is one text, one dinner, one look across the table that sends you back into self-doubt. That is why Marcus Aurelius keeps this grounded. The real answer to injury is not theatre or payback. It is refusing to become like the person who keeps pulling you off center. And that leads to a harder question. If they keep getting inside your head, why are they still being let through the gate? There are 6 signs worth noticing here, and each one points to the same skill. You cannot control other people, but you can control access. By the end, you should know who keeps breaching your peace and how to start building an inner citadel that does not bargain with chaos. If someone repeatedly disturbs your peace, they do not automatically deserve more explanation. That rule about explanation matters because it forces a harder question. The issue is not whether someone is a villain. The issue is what they do to your attention once they get inside. That can feel uncomfortable to admit, because people are rarely one thing. Someone can be wounded, funny, familiar, even generous in flashes, and still leave your mind less steady every time you deal with them. That is where the Stoic frame gets useful. Instead of asking whether they are good or bad, ask what effect they have on your ruling faculty. Do they sharpen your judgment or scatter it? Do they steady your nervous system or keep it on edge? That shift sounds small, but it changes the whole evaluation. The inner citadel is not about hiding from people. It is about selective access. Not everyone gets a room in your mind. Not everyone gets a vote in your identity. Not everyone gets to provoke your body and call that closeness. A simple test helps here. Notice the effect. Name the pattern. Narrow access. That is the gate. Once you stop debating what keeps hurting you, the 6 signs become easier to spot. The first one is always the most obvious. They disturb your peace and call it normal. Sign number 1. They hijack your peace. Peace is ownership, and you can hear the loss of it in the body before you explain it in the mind. You leave a family dinner with your shoulders tight, replaying one sentence in the car like it was a courtroom ruling. Then it happens again at work. A co-worker tosses out a small line, still doing it that way. And somehow, that 5-second jab keeps living in your head for 3 hours. That is the awkward part. Nothing dramatic happened, yet your whole inner climate changed. That is the first breach. Some people know exactly how to get a reaction out of you. They use criticism, chaos, guilt, or that polished form of passive aggression that lets them insult you and act surprised when you feel it. The content almost does not matter. What matters is that your nervous system keeps becoming their instrument. In Stoic terms, their words are external. Your assent is the gate. When your calm keeps rising and falling with their moods, you are not owning your peace. You are renting it. A useful line here is simple and clean. I am not discussing this in this tone. It will feel a little stiff the first few times, and that is fine. Clean boundaries usually sound awkward to people who benefit from blurred ones. Then measure the recovery window. How long does it take to return to baseline after dealing with them? 10 minutes. 2 hours. All day. The person with the longest recovery window is telling you something important, and the next sign is subtler. They do not just disturb your peace. They miss the version of you they could control. Sign number 2. They mourn the old you. Identity is chosen, and the wrong people take that personally. You draw one clean line. Answer one text a little later. Decline one invitation without the usual apology tour, and suddenly the language changes. You have changed. You used to be softer. You are cold now. That is not always grief. A lot of the time, it is frustration that the old access point is gone. That reaction tells you more than they intend. People who benefited from your confusion often feel betrayed by your clarity. They were comfortable when you over-explained, overgave, apologized too quickly, and kept your boundaries soft enough to walk through. Once discipline enters the room, they experience it as distance. That can feel strangely lonely at first. Because growth is often less glamorous and more awkward than people admit, the Stoic view cuts through the guilt. Your identity is not a permanent sentence handed down by your past. It is a daily act of authorship. Marcus Aurelius was getting at something practical when he said, "The soul takes the color of its thoughts." If you keep performing an outdated version of yourself to calm other people down, you train your own mind to live in an expired role. A clean response helps. I have changed, and that change was necessary. Then keep an identity friction log. Write down who calls your growth arrogance, distance, or betrayal. The pattern shows up fast. And once someone resists your new identity, the next pressure usually follows. They ask you to trade your values just to keep them comfortable. Sign number 3. You negotiate your values to keep them. Belonging without betrayal sounds obvious until you are in the room and the room gets tense. A friend says, "Come on, do it once." A partner says, "Why are you making this a principal thing?" Then you hear yourself laughing along with something that does not fit your standards. Not because you agree, but because conflict feels more expensive than compromise in that moment. That is where the damage starts to compound. You are not just uncomfortable. You are split. The relationship keeps itself alive by charging your conscience rent. You blur your schedule, soften your ethics, tolerate disrespect, or act against your better judgment just to keep the connection smooth. That is a bad trade. And it usually happens in small, quiet moments, rather than one dramatic collapse. The Stoics were severe about this for a reason. If it would offend you to hand your body to a stranger, why hand over your mind to someone who pressures, mocks, or governs it? Virtue is not a nice extra. It is the core asset. Once a relationship depends on repeated self-betrayal, it stops being a bond and starts acting like corrosion. That can be hard to admit because the social reward is immediate and the inner cost shows up later. A useful rule is simple. Never pay for belonging with self-respect. Then run a conscience check after the interaction. Did I leave more aligned or less aligned? Give it a score of +1, 0, or -1. 3 negative scores in a week is not bad luck. It is a pattern. And some people do not stop at pressuring your values in the present. They keep dragging your past into the room to control your future. Sign number 4. They use your past as a verdict. I begin again is the right phrase here, because some people do not argue with your present. They put your past on trial instead. You mention a new goal, a cleaner habit, a different standard, and they smile like they caught you pretending. You, since when? Or the sharper version, let us not act like you have always been this disciplined. Everyone laughs, and for a second it works. A smaller version of you gets pulled back into the room. That move has a purpose. Verdict givers keep old evidence alive, so your growth never feels fully legitimate. Their leverage depends on freezing you in an expired identity. Stoicism cuts against that instinct hard. The past is material for instruction, not a life sentence. You are allowed to review it, learn from it, and still refuse to live inside it. That sounds simple, but it gets awkward fast when people are invested in the old storyline. A useful reset is plain and direct. I begin again. Not as performance. Not as borrowed self-help language. As a refusal to let outdated facts outrank current conduct. You can also say, that was true once. It is not true now. Both lines do the same job. They separate history from destiny. Then watch the ratio. How often does this person mention your former failures compared with your present effort? If they are attached to the older file more than the current evidence, they are not protecting truth. They are protecting your limitation. And even when they stop talking about your past, your body may still tell you what their presence does. Your purpose gets weaker after every encounter. Sign number 5. Their presence drains your moral energy. Environment is strategy, even when it looks like just another conversation on the calendar. You walk into a meeting ready to solve something, and you walk out strangely cynical. You start the morning clear and focused. Then one call with a certain person leaves you second-guessing your work, skipping the workout, and reaching for your phone like your mind is trying to escape its own atmosphere. That kind of drain is easy to underestimate because it is not always dramatic. No shouting, no betrayal scene, just a slow drop in altitude. Seneca had a sharp eye for this. Keep company with people who make you better, not simply more entertained or more comfortable. The wrong people do not always wreck your life in visible ways. Sometimes they just make excellence feel exhausting and make mediocrity feel reasonable. You can see it in different settings. One workplace has a colleague who turns every serious idea into sarcasm. One friendship treats every new ambition like a joke that needs trimming down. After enough exposure, your standards start to feel excessive. That is the awkward trap. You mistake adaptation for maturity when it is really erosion. A clean rule helps. If proximity repeatedly weakens purpose, reduce proximity. Then score the aftermath. Rate your focus, self-respect, and clarity from 1 to 10 after each interaction. When one person keeps collapsing all three, the data is speaking, and the final sign goes deeper than stress. It is the quiet shame that tells you you are betraying your own potential by staying. Sign number 6. You feel inner shame around them. Shame is a signal, and it is usually quieter than people expect. You sit with them, smiling, nodding, keeping the conversation smooth, and nothing obviously terrible happens. Then you get in the car, or step into the shower, or lie down at night, and one sentence starts pressing against your ribs. I do not like who I become around these people. That is not oversensitivity. That is evidence. This one goes deeper than discomfort because it reaches conscience. The Stoics worried less about pain than about self-betrayal. Pain can hit the body and pass. Shame lingers when you know you acted beneath your own standard. If a relationship keeps leaving you more false, more compliant, more eager to shrink so things stay easy, it is not just unpleasant. It is shaping you in the wrong direction. That is the awkward realization. Sometimes the worst harm is not what they did to you. It is what you keep agreeing to become around them. So, make the protocol final. Notice the effect. I leave diminished. Name the pattern. This bond rewards self-betrayal. Narrow access. Fewer calls. Less explaining. Firmer boundaries. Full exit if needed. That is not cruelty. It is self-respect with a backbone. A clean line helps when the moment comes. This connection no longer fits the person I am becoming. Then use a simple checklist. After seeing them, do you feel smaller? Guilty for growing? Tempted to abandon yourself? Or relieved only when you leave? If two or more keep repeating, trust the signal. And that brings up the obvious objection. Is this wisdom? Or is it just becoming cold? Shame is a signal. So the fear here is easy to name. If you start closing the gate, does that make you cold? That question feels noble on the surface, but it can hide a bad habit underneath. A lot of people confuse endless access with love because it sounds generous and avoids the awkwardness of saying enough. Stoic detachment is not numbness. It is disciplined access control. You can wish someone well and still decide they no longer get a room in your mind. You can forgive them and still stop inviting their chaos back into your life. You can drop resentment without continuing the relationship. Those are different decisions. And clarity matters here. Truffle. The real confusion is proportion. Not everyone deserves equal intimacy, equal explanation, or equal influence. The inner citadel is not built on hatred. It is built on wise limits. Some people belong in your memory, not in your next chapter. That relief after the quiet pause usually comes with a memory. Picture a kitchen late at night. One person leaning on the counter saying, "You used to be easier to talk to." The sentence sounds caring for about 3 seconds. Then the friction shows up. They do not miss your honesty. They miss your availability. That is the moment the frame changes. I was not losing them. I was losing a role they had assigned me. The point is to stop guessing and start observing. That can feel a little awkward, because once you write names down, the pattern gets harder to romanticize. Still, clarity is better than confusion with good manners. On the first day, list the 3 people who most disturb your peace. On the second, name the pattern for each one. Are they hijacking your calm, anchoring you to an old identity, pulling you into value compromises, using your past as a verdict, draining your energy, or triggering shame? That naming matters because vague discomfort is easy to ignore. On the third day, use one clean boundary sentence with no extra explanation. On the fourth, reduce one access point. Reply less. Shorten the call. Skip the reactive text. Cancel one low-value interaction. On the fifth, practice the reset phrase. I begin again when someone drags your past into the present. On the sixth, spend 1 full hour with a person. place, or practice that makes you steadier. On the 7th, decide who gets more access, less access, or none. Keep a simple scorecard with 5 lines. Name, pattern, recovery window, after contact score, access decision. Then ask the hard question, who consistently makes my life narrower? Let evidence answer before guilt does. That question at the end matters because evidence has a way of cutting through guilt. Letting people go is not cruelty. It is self-respect with clear edges. Stoicism does not ask you to hate people who cannot walk with you. It asks you to value your reason, your peace, and your character more than your attachment to familiar chaos. That means no villain speeches and no martyr stories. Just clarity. Some chapters end because your future cannot be built by negotiating with what keeps dragging you backward. That is not dramatic. It is clean. And yes, it can feel awkward when you stop explaining yourself to people who expected permanent access. The inner citadel is built exactly there. One boundary at a time. One refusal to betray your conscience at a time. One decision to stop handing your mind away just because history makes the bond feel sacred. Every one of those choices returns a piece of your life. Comment, I protect my peace, if you are done giving emotional access to people who keep charging your future rent.